Coogs House, the Houston Cougars men's basketball program, has been built into a perennial contender. But what will they look like next?
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars, and I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to step by, thank you for making it Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. If you want to join the conversation but don't know what to say, tell us how you eat a Kit Kat. And there is a wrong answer to that question. Not always wrong answers, but there is one of that one. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. More on that later. But I want to talk about the future of this Houston Cougar basketball program, both in the distance. I want to talk about some recruits that can fill a role that I think is important for building this program forward, kind of taking that last leap to the official blue blood era kind of stuff. I'm talking about an alum, honestly, and the decision he made to leave early. Once upon a time, that kind of made me think that Houston needs more of this kind of stuff. But first, I want to talk some about offense with Milos Uzan and how he fits into the system in Houston. Now, what I did to do that was look at a set that Houston ran a lot with Jamal Shead as a decision maker, like sophomore year of Jamal Shead, when he wasn't quite the scorer that he was as a senior, certainly, and not even necessarily as much last season. And it is a visual aid of sorts, but I will talk through what the set looks like for the audio audience. But the folks watching on YouTube will get a little bit of a visual with this as well. I don't have the rights to clips, and I'm not one to violate rights issues and potentially jeopardize this whole thing, right? I have too much fun talking to you each and every day. But let's break it down and start with a set called Floppy. Now, Floppy is where the two wing players, the 2 and the 3, flop side. So you start with like your 4 and your 5 man down on the blocks, and your 2 and your 3 lined up on the baseline side of them. Your point guard is up top, and they just quite literally flip flop size. Now Milos is a big, strong, 6'4" point guard. I don't see him getting ball pressure out there on an island, anything too terribly crazy by a stretch. Once they flip flop sides, I have it going to the left because that goes to LJ Cryer's side, the 2 guard in this instance, but you could obviously go either way with this. You have what we call a ghost screen, where basically the point guard and the shooting guard essentially interact and swap one another, putting the point guard on the wing and the 2 guard ends up at the top of the key. While that's happening, the 5 man rises to like the nail or the free throw line area, ultimately creating a quick flare screen for the shooting guard and with the 3 to get out of the way and drop to the corner. Then you have the 5 man go set a screen and roll with the point guard. This is where things get fun. This is where Milos becomes such a valuable player, because suddenly, as Milos attacks off the screen, he goes off the 5 man. You set a Spain pick and roll on the backside there, which means that the 4 is going to raise from the block and set a backside screen for the 5 going to the basket. Ultimately should open up a lob. Potentially. On the backside of this, you got the 3 and the 2 interacting with a flare. They did this all the time. Honestly, go back to like Rob Gray, Galen Robinson days. Sampson likes these kinds of sets where you have double-sided action off the floppy initially. Now, Milos gets to make decisions, and this is where Milos is so good. The first decision, obviously, is if he can get to Javier Francis on the lob, that's 2 points, right? And so if the Spain pick and roll opens up the lob, he can flip it up top, get 2 points. If not, I imagine Francis continues his motion on through the other block. That way kind of clears out some space. Let's go with as if Milos were to kick out, though, to, in this instance, the 3, the wing, Emmanuel Sharp. All right. Now that 3 can do a couple of different things. He can either go down towards the corner. He can maybe, kick it on an extra skip pass or one more pass to the corner if someone's open down there, if that's LJ Cryer or whatever. Or he can start to dribble towards the middle of the floor, in which you got Milos, again, big body going instead of a screen to open up Juwan Roberts coming off of that. Roberts then comes off the screen and gets another Spain roll. This time Roberts getting the Spain pick and roll from Francis. Then you have Robert throwing the rim. The 3-man is now across the midline of the floor. That's now Emmanuel Sharp driving and attacking the basket. Obviously, one big part of this would be if you could have ultimately you want someone to get back, but you also have a lift out of that with LJ Cryer coming back here. At this point, Miles is spotted up in the corner, which is not his strongest of suits. But again, he's made this decision to find the 3-man up top, get Emmanuel some action. Now, let's say instead of that, instead of kicking out to the 3, Miles decides he actually has better options if he skips the ball to the corner to the 2 guard. Okay, so let's say he kicks it down there to the corner. 3-man then dives to the lane. You obviously get a back cut there if you wanted to. You could even get some kind of a screen out of the 5-man there. Not necessarily a necessity by any stretch, but you potentially could, right? And so 2 guard's going to get the ball in the corner. If he can't catch and shoot, raise up and kind of replace where the 3 was in the slot. You now have the 5-man and Milos down low to set screens in the blocks, while the 4 is coming up to set a pick and roll with LJ. This opens up and becomes a bunch of fun because the 2 guard, LJ, can now do a pick and roll with Jawan. Jawan rolls to the near side elbow. You have LJ attack the middle lane, if not the far elbow. And then, truthfully, Emmanuel Sharp, who's now into the basket because he cut through, can go to either corner for a catch and shoot 3, running off screens from either Milos or JVR. Again, big body setting screens. LJ can either skip it to the corner himself or hit Jawan, who's a great passer, and then flip it to the corner on that side. So you get another great look out of this from them. Ultimately trying to set up an Emmanuel Sharp corner 3. You see this kind of action. They do a lot, actually. It's not always off of 2 screens, but they did once upon a time back in like 2019, 2021. Go back and check the tape a little bit. Some fun offense out of those groups. Now, ultimately, this all comes down to Milos making decisions from this middle of the lane spot, if we want to recycle it all the way back, where it comes off that first screen and has so many. Like, let's say he hits Jalen Roberts the pocket pass here, and immediately you have Jalen Roberts an entire isolation side, right? If Jalen can't get an ISO off or isn't feeling the ISO necessarily, he starts to dribble up to the middle of the floor. Then you have Milos go and set the first of a staggered screen here. Look, in a second, it'll make more sense for Emmanuel. Get Emmanuel wanting a full head of steam. You get LJ Cryer to relocate from one corner to the other, which will make more sense in a second, but he's going to end up being on the ball side for a kick out. You have Javier Francis helping with a screen there as well. You now have Emmanuel going into a dribble handoff with Jawan that gets him to the middle of the floor, gets Emmanuel attacking the left side of the basket. I have Milos flaring the corner. I could also see him rising to kind of pull defenders either direction. And you have LJ Cryer in the corner for a kick out. All of these things get predicated on the initial read of the early set of the floppy action, which gets Milos to this middle spot on the floor. And again, we've seen Milos at Oklahoma do such a great job of distributing the basketball, making things make sense. And I show all this to say that this is the kind of stuff that Houston ran, again, in 19, 20, even some in 2021, when they had to use Jamal as more traditional point guard, or they had like a Corey Davis type point guard, or even Galen, but Galen could score some, so it was a little bit different. But I think people worry because they don't see Milos as this like tremendous scorer, and they wonder where the offense is going to come from, because ultimately last season, Jamal did the bulk of the scoring. And I get the fear there, I get the concern there. However, they've run sets before that use point guards in more traditional passing roles. Last year, Jamal was just able to carry a large amount of the scoring load. I think it's worth mentioning that Emmanuel is going to be a year older, right? LJ is going to be a year older, right? You're going to have Terrence stepping into a new role as he gets healthier and healthier, right? Cordell is coming in. Ramon continues to add to his game, right? Malik Wilson added to his game over the course of last season. What kind of things does he bring to the table? All kinds of guys here that will play a important role in the offense. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bulk of scoring coming from Milos. Now, I will say that Milos has a great resume. And if you have a need for someone with a great resume, I got to recommend none other than LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs is a great place to hire for your small business. If you can get someone to come help you out, like Milos going to help out the Cougs, I got to recommend it. Whether you're hiring for your small business, whenever you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why I have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs is the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing, people that don't work in small business are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. So LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process that much easier and quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/locked on college. LinkedIn.com/locked on college. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Now, I want to talk some about Jarace Walker. Now, Jarace Walker is on the Indiana Pacers. The Indiana Pacers are in the Eastern Conference Finals as we speak. I should point out, I think they're actually playing Tuesday night. I'm not as up on the NBA as I was once upon a time. I believe they are playing on Tuesday night, and I think Jarace has me leapfrogging to the next wave of things to help use Cougar basketball program. Is going to be more of these tweener types, guys with multiple skill sets and big bodies, right? Same way Milos is a 6'4" point guard, right? Getting that 6'8" small forward, air quotes on the small, is going to be really, really important for like taking the program to that next height, that next level, right? And I think a lot of people feel like Jarace should still be around. And I'm here to actually argue that Jarace made the right decision. Right now, I could argue in the millions and millions of dollars that Jarace made the right decision to go pro, but I want to talk through the actual situation he landed in. Now, when you declare that you're going to go pro, especially when you're a projected lottery pick, you're going to make a lot of money, but you don't necessarily, especially because of the way the ping pong balls go, know where you're going to end up, right? So I want to stress that first, that Jarace going pro, he was ready. He absolutely is ready. We'll talk more about that in a second, but he landed in a spot where his skill set isn't being utilized necessarily as much. And it actually kind of makes some sense for the way they're doing things there. But I don't think it's right to use hindsight to judge the decision to go pro from Jarace, right? Jarace made a great decision for him and himself and his family. And honestly, the hindsight, like, well, the Pacers don't even use him quite like like, okay, but that's all because we now know the Pacers were going to acquire him via trade at the draft night, right? If he landed in Washington, who originally was picking that spot, he'd have been fine. Let's talk about why that is. So Jarace's season has been, he played some games in the G League and absolutely dominated, right? He had 23 points per game in 32 minutes. He's averaging 5 rebounds and 3 assists per game. He shot 47% from 3 on 6.4 attempts across his G League games. Clearly above and beyond, better than the NBA G League, right? Like he's just better than those guys. And so then he gets a real stretch of play with the NBA roster there in Indiana in March. Now, in less than 20 minutes, he had 6, 6, and 7, 6.6 rebounds, 6.6 assists, 7 rebounds versus New Orleans. Like 10 days later, he played 23 minutes against Chicago, had 10 points and 4 rebounds and 4 assists. And then 2 weeks after that, he had 8 points, 7 assists, and 4 rebounds against the Clippers. And that stretch in March, he played a lot of minutes in a lot of different NBA games, right? I would point out, though, that he actually was kind of filling in for other guys that were down with an ankle, down with this, down with that. And truthfully, the Indiana roster needs guys like him, but they didn't necessarily know they're going to be in the win now mode they were, right? They acquired Tyrese Halliburton from the Sacramento Kings, young point guard, talented point guard, tall point guard, combo guard kind of guy in terms of his build, but very clearly a point guard in terms of his play. And they brought in Jarace to kind of help, be a secondary creator and a big forward and those kinds of things. And they signed Bruce Brown, a small forward, played for the Denver Nuggets as a champion, and they brought him in to kind of be a veteran leader. And, Bruce Brown was playing like a champion. He was playing like an NBA champion, kind of playing a lot of games. And about mid-season, you typically would see them start to shift some of those minutes to the younger guy like Jarace and kind of work that guy in some to make sure, development and those kinds of things. And typically you see it at teams that have lottery picks because they're not trying to win the NBA championship that year. They're trying to develop the talent they've got. However, when the Indiana Pacers got to January, they realized they had a shot. Miles Turner, the big man they've got in the center, he's playing tremendously, right? Tyrese Halliburton has elevated his game another level. They're going to go try and win a championship, and the Toronto Raptors weren't having a fire sale. And so Indiana traded Bruce Brown for Pascal Siakam, who plays a very similar play style and a very similar position to Jarace Walker. Now, ultimately, this kind of led to him getting a lot less minutes the second half of the season and got a lot less minutes in the playoffs. Obviously, Barry playing a whole lot in the playoffs. But Indiana was ahead of the schedule that they thought they were in when they were in the draft, right? So they went and got a guy that does a lot of the same thing Jarace does, but as a veteran in this league, a two-time All-Star, one of the most improved player in 2019. He's tall, he's long, he does a lot of efforty kind of hustle plays, and frankly, for what's worth, Pascal Siakam looks like the kind of guy with some Houston Cougar culture in him for sure, right? And I almost think it's kind of reassuring that Jarace ultimately lost out on some development in the second half of the season in terms of in-game action because Indiana's a franchise trying to win. Coach Rick Carlisle is a great coach for Jarace. He's also trying to win a championship, right? You also they bring in Pascal Siakam, whose game looks a lot like we could see Jarace Walker's game turn into. They just brought in the more mature, evolved Pokemon version of what Jarace is going to be, right? And so I think that that's a compliment to what Jarace will be for them at some point, assuming they don't, move him on to somewhere he plays more right away, right? I also think it's worth pointing out that other guys that are drafted in the lottery that were drafted in the lottery in 2023 are not necessarily playing a lot on playoff teams. You've got guys that are like maybe playing more, like Bilal Koulibaly. I can't say that name right ever. The French kid drafted initially by Indiana and traded with Washington. The trade that happened got Jarace to Indiana on draft night. Yeah, he played a lot more minutes per game and played in 63 games. Washington stunk. Okay, Jarace could do that for a team that stinks. He's playing for a team in the Eastern Conference Finals, right? Taylor Hendricks also played very well in the American Athletic Conference, just like Jarace did. Also a top 10 pick. He went to Utah. He played some in the G League in the start of the season, and then he played regularly for 40 games for the Utah Jazz. Got 7.3 points per game for a Utah Jazz team that kind of stinks. All these guys, really, all the first round guys are either not getting to play, with the exception of two, we'll get to them in a second, are not really getting to play or are not on very good teams. That's the way that the first round of 2023's draft went. The two exceptions are Cason Wallace, plays for Oklahoma City, and Derek Lively plays for the Dallas Mavericks. Both those teams are pretty good. Both those guys are pretty strong roles. I would point out they're very clearly roles, right? Derek Lively is the athletic, bouncy kind of center they've got there in Dallas. Cason Wallace is the perimeter guard defender. Both of them also fought for minutes all season long before kind of working their way into the rotation shortly before the playoffs. Both teams also don't have guys that do the things that those two do, where Indiana went out and got Pascal Siakam because they wanted the more evolved Pokemon version, right? Honestly, I guess you could argue that Jaime Jaquez in Miami did the same. However, I would argue that Miami's not any good, right? They barely made the playoffs in a bad East, and they got bounced pretty early, right? I guess Jaime Jaquez played for them. They're qualifying in my head as team's not very good, but they did make the playoffs, right? For what it's worth, he played a lot when Jimmy Butler got hurt. And if Pascal were to get hurt, Jarace played a lot too, as we saw in March. And I said to say that I actually think that Jarace's decision is justified more so by the fact that he's on a championship contending team. They clearly fit pieces together where he was going to work out. They just were ahead of schedule. And so they went out and got a more, veteran champion kind of player. I mean, Pascal Siakam won an NBA title in 2019 as kind of the second best guy on a championship winning team in 2019, the Toronto Raptors, right? I think that speaks volumes to how Jarace was going to fit, how Jarace could still fit one day with them. And I don't think that justifies calling his decision wrong. I know I've talked about this for a long time on today's episode, but I feel like people are always whenever I talk about Jarace online, oh, he should have stayed. He should have. And I just don't think that's fair. Would Houston have been better had he stayed? Yes, absolutely. Does Houston need more guys like Jarace Walker? I can't speak. I'm so upset about this. Jarace Walker to come through and stay at Houston? Yes, they absolutely do. And in the third segment, I want to talk some about positionally guys that remind me of that, and guys that Houston can get in the 2025 class that kind of have that same combo type of frame. But first, you've heard me talk about the fact that we're trying to buy a house, and that means you got to get your finances in order. And let's just get to it. You want to grow your portfolio to deal with the rising costs of inflation, to pay off your debt, or to get a mortgage like myself, or maybe pay off yours. Pretty much anything standing between you and that financial freedom. You're trying to make sure you get all your ducks in a row for that. With Yahoo Finance, you can get access to news, data, and tools you need in order to help reach that financial freedom. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you the tools you need and the data you need in one place. The number one finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst rankings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. You can securely link your brokerage accounts for a unified view of your wealth, including a 401k and other investments. A comprehensive perspective is what sets apart great investors, and it's how Yahoo Finance ensures you have the right insight to look at your wealth in its entirety. With a community of over 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news, analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. All right, so I know I said this episode's about the future, and I just spent a whole segment talking about the past, but Jarace had me thinking, who would the next guy like that be? And I like the 2024 class a lot. I'm not sure Chase or Mercy are quite what I'm talking about. Chase and Mercy will be impact players in Houston, but when I'm saying Jarace and who's going to be the next one of him, I don't even necessarily mean the next one and done, as much as I mean like a big forward who can do true perimeter things, right? Chase is big, but not Chase McCarty, but not quite as big as I'm talking here, right? I got a couple guys that jump off the page in the 2025 class with University of Houston offers. Two of them are from Houston, right? The first of which is Sebastian Williams Adams from St. John's High School. So, he's a smart kid, 6'8", 230 pounds, 4-star prospect. He's a true small forward, and having watched him play in person, I can tell you right now, he kind of even reminds you of a two guard sometimes at 6'8", 230 pounds. He's got a great handle on the ball, shoots a decent 3-point jump shot, and it's getting better. And frankly, he's a smart basketball player, not just because of the St. John. He's a smart basketball player. I mean, he's good decisions, crisp reads. And if you told me he was trying to play a two guard, I'd believe you. That kind of combination of size and skill is important and impressive. Similarly, and this is a kid that plays with him on the John Lucas third elite team, the JL3 elite Nike EYBL team, if you're in the AAU circuit, Shelton Henderson. Shelton is 6'6", 220 pounds, a 4-star kid out of Bel Air. At 6'6", 220, he's closer to like the power forward type play, though. So whereas Sebastian is tall and long and plays like a smaller, like a guard sometimes, Shelton is athletically built like a big wing and can do power forward type of things. And I almost wonder if that makes him more of a Houston Cougar, actually, because the way we utilize like long-armed power forwards as opposed to 6'10" power forwards, but I digress. Shelton's a tremendous athlete, right? Super strong, super physical, understands his gifts, but plays with an incredible tenacity to maximize them. And it's really, really fun to watch Sebastian Williams-Adams and Shelton Henderson play together for JL3. Again, the AAU circuit comes through your town, the Nike EYBL circuit. Go watch John Lucas III, the 17U team with these two kids on. It's really, really talented and great team representing Houston on the way. The third guy is not from Houston, but he is considered the third overall recruit nationally, has a Houston offer, has a visit with Houston set up for the summer. 5-star kid named Koa Pete. Koa is from Arizona originally, although Arizona is not super high on his like stock when you look at where people are predicting who he's predicted to go to. I say that to say that I don't know where he's going to end up necessarily. I do know that Houston's got an offer out to him, and he plays that Houston Cougar style of tenacity. I think that he looks like the kind of guy that could fit in very well. Obviously, he's a tremendous basketball player. He's a true one and done in the same way that Jarace was, though, right? He's 6'8", 220, great three-point jump shot. Not quite putting the ball on the floor as well as I've seen Sebastian do it, but he might not have to, right? He can shoot really, really well. Koa uses his size down inside as well. I've seen him back guys down, put guys on his back, and beat them down to the block and that kind of stuff. And so I think his versatility reminds me of Jarace a lot. And those are the three in the 2025 class that are like the combo forward type thing I could see happening. Houston's also, for its worth, offered a handful of really, really talented, more traditional power forwards in that class. Bryson Tiller, top 5 kid nationally, not to be confused with the musician. 6'9", 230 pounds from Atlanta, Georgia. I like Chris Sinek. He's 6'10", 210 from New Orleans. Isdor Newman, top 30 kid nationally. And frankly, when you talk about playing with that tenacity, that Houston Cougar culture tenacity, Chris plays that a lot. John Clark is a local kid, 6'9", 210, top 40 nationally from Klein Kane. Similarly, Alejandro Aviles, 6'8", is a 3-star kid. He's from Dream City Christian High School. Both John and Alejandro are from Houston. And so, it'd be nice in the same way that Sebastian or Shelton being from Houston would be nice to keep in town. I don't know which forwards they're going to want in that class. I do know that by the time we're getting to the 2025 class, you're looking at like some guys that are currently in the roster and graduated out, and sure you got to replace some guys and I feel like they're going to need a combo forward and a power forward in that class. The combo forward, though, the guy that can really play power forward, really play small forward, maybe even really play the 2 guard, is going to be so important, right? Perhaps more important than the guards in that class, because you got the 2024 class with Mercy Miller, 2023 class had Cordell, who redshirted. I love a lot of guards that Houston's already offered in the 2026 class as well. We'll get to them when we get there. Keontae Graber, though, is so much fun. So much fun. Anyway, I say all that to say that, truthfully, when looking at the future of the program, you're looking at some athletes that might remind you of the past. And I mean that in the best way possible. The deal is just to have those guys come through, maybe stay, or just continue to come through more frequently. I'm excited about it. I hope you are too. Lots of things to get excited for the Hoops program. We got more on the way this week. We got football recruiting to talk about. Maybe we'll talk some about the video game, all kinds of fun stuff going on with the Houston Cougar football program. I'd love to talk more basketball as things get going. If you got things you want to talk about as well, drop them in the comments on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, or find me on X, Instagram, whatever social media platform you like, at Painsworth512. Thank you all so much for being Locked On Cougs, your first listen today. Locked On Cougs is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. I mean, your team every day. Go Cougs.